Today, what we're going to take a look at are generative simulations. And so, first, what we're going to do is take a look at the kind of like the summary of what these simulations do. Then, I'll give you guys kind of a quick peek under the hood and I'll show you the way the instructions are built and kind of the intentionality behind that. And then we'll come back and we'll look at one of these things in action as if, I was a student and I was interacting with the simulation. The really cool part about these simulations is that they are limited only by your imagination as the teacher and the subject matter that you're instructing. So you can take your students and you can put them in any period of time. You can put them with any cast of characters you want who are trying to achieve any objective that you describe, which is really cool because it can sometimes feel really detached to be teaching any subject area that doesn't have a direct relation to your students, right? That they can't kind of picture themselves in. So for generative simulations, they are built, and this is kind of like the view under the hood, by an instruction set that is notated through some type of hierarchy, meaning like you have headers and you have text and subtitles and bullet points and italics and numeraled lists. But you have all of those things and they're used with intention in the instructions so that the language model can accurately read what you want it to do. So for this particular case, we have a goal, right? And this is just a basic summary of what this simulation is. Then you have the personas in play, so the role your students are going to have. So in this case, they are advisors to President Roosevelt, and then the role the AI will play. This bulleted list, the reason that it's bulleted is because I want all of these items to apply only to this subset, right? I don't want it to apply, for example, these actions to the narrative. I want them to apply only within this heading, right? And subset. That's the idea. So they're bulleted for that reason. The narrative, the overall story, and then the steps that the students will go through. I'm instructing the model what I want it to do and not do, et cetera, et cetera. So that's kind of a brief peek under the hood. But what we're going to do first and foremost is take, and there's a lot of ways you can deliver this. You can deliver it in a custom gym if your district has access to those. You can deliver them in any type of OpenAI project, um, and students will be able to interact with the simulation. Those are the better ways. That's the way that we deliver these type of simulations. But if you don't have access to those kind of intricate tools, you can really simply just have your students go to any language model that they have access to and tell the model just run the simulation, copy and paste all the text, wham bam, here you go, right? So inside the chat with President Roosevelt, the very first thing that the simulation asks is a couple of basic questions to get an understanding of what the student's knowledge is. Because the way that the simulation is presented to that student is going to be varied based on what their kind of like subset knowledge is. So if the students answer these questions really elementary on a really elementary level, then the model will use things like shorter phrases, less graphic detail, etc. If the student crafts a great response, it's going to assume that that's a higher achieving student and is going to tailor the subsequent elements in the module accordingly or in the simulation accordingly. Okay. So the very first question, couple to let me know what you know, right? What do you already know about the goals of the New Deal? Let's just pick a student answer, right? It was designed to help Americans, right? So kind of generally right, but not overly detailed. Can you name any of the programs? Let's just throw out Social Security. So Gemini is now going to consider that and it's going to tell them, right? It's fundamentally right. Now let's take a look at some of these challenges, right? Which of the following scenarios would you like to focus on? And so now the students will pick. Do they want to look at the relief programs in more detail, the recovery, or the reform, right? So let's just say the recovery. Students will enter that. And now it's going into the narrative part. Now it's laying this kind of background for, where is the student interacting? What time period are they in? Who are the characters that are in the simulation, etc. Okay, so it's March 1933. You're seated across from President Roosevelt in the Oval Office. The radio microphone sits on his desk, ready to carry his words to the country. Again, this is a fireside chat simulation. FDR leans back in his chair. He looks at you thoughtfully. Let's figure out how we're going to explain the NIRA and the Public Works Administration to the people, right? Business leaders are key to recovery, yet many of them are skeptical about government interference. We must get them on board. How do we sell them on the idea of these programs? And then the students would have to respond to President Roosevelt, right? Let's say um, we sell them by convincing them that the programs are in their own best interest, right? So again, student type of answer, pretty broad, not very specific, not a lot of details, right? So President Roosevelt's going to basically say that's the core of it. However, he's going to push back and ask for more details, right? What tangible, immediate benefit can I promise them? So it's asking the students to dig into the material to get a lot more concise. This is exactly what a good teacher would do. They would hear the student's response, they would validate it, they would tie it back to the material, and they would ask for more detail. Same thing is happening in the simulation here. So you'll see that simulation will run all the way through the number of student responses, and then at the very end, it'll tell them, "Here's what you did really well. Here's what you struggled with. Here's where you need to focus in the future." So I hope this helps. I hope it gives you a little bit more of a look under the hood. And again, these simulations can really be used in any subject area to instruct really any amount of content that you want to. And hopefully, it helps reach across the aisle a little bit to your students. So if you have questions, please feel free to reach out to us. We would really, really love to dig into the content with you a little bit. So get in touch and we'll go from there. Thanks, everyone.